Hi, here we are in my kitchen. We're gonna make a basic loaf of bread. So let me start by showing you what you're gonna need to start. Okay, now looking left to right, roughly, you'll see I've got some agave syrup. Agave syrup. I've got a pan with parchment paper in it. I might need more than one. Salt, yeast, olive oil. I like using gluten. About 2 cups of water, and it's probably warm. It's not probably, it is warm. And then just plain white flour, and of course, a bowl. Now, you'll see my style is to not measure very accurately, just to do this all by feel. So I've got the yeast. I'm going to start with the yeast, and it's probably about 1 tablespoon. I put just kind of a little handful. I don't know if you can see it. A handful, and I dump it in the bowl. And yeast is a little live thing, and we want to wake it up and feed it. So I do that by adding warm water. It's about 2 cups. If you want less, use less, but I'm going to use about 2 cups. And it'll start to wake it up. I like putting a little bit of gluten in it. Somebody said how much, and I said, I don't know, you shake the bag and put whatever comes out. But it ends up being, I don't know, a couple tablespoons I put in there. And I find my yeast really likes agave. You can use honey or just plain sugar or anything else, but I'm just gonna literally kind of squirt agave into the bowl. And when my dad's living with us, I use a lot of agave. And I let it sit for a little bit. I use a rice paddle and stir it around a little bit. I want to see little bubbles forming. That tells me that the yeast is working. Once I found some of my mom's yeast, and it didn't bubble. And it turned out that it had been in Maine for about 10 years and didn't survive the Maine winters and the length of time in there, and so nothing was bubbling. And I was really glad to know that before I'd put a whole bunch of flour in it. I'm going to add some white flour. I'm going to put a little bit in it now. The total will be about 4 cups. I find it's often a little bit more, but I'm just going to dump in a little bit of flour. I'm just sprinkling it on the top. And I want to be sure to note, I was afraid of not telling you, that you want to notice I'm using plastic, glass, ceramic. I'm not going to use any metal implements because this is a little live thing and it doesn't like hanging out next to metal. So here I've just added those ingredients. I'm going to give it a quick little stir and then let it sit and make sure that I can see the bubbles. This is called proofing the yeast, letting it wake up a little bit and enjoy the sugar. I'm hoping you can see some little bubbles in there, that this is happy yeast. I'm going to start adding the, let's see, I'll add a little salt, a little olive oil, and then about a cup of flour, but I'll just take it and I'll continue whisking it for the first little bit. So how much salt, I'll show you, I just go like this, kind of, and then a little dollop of olive oil, like that. And we'll probably coat it at the end with a little bit more. And I'm just going to take and dump some flour in here. You can see I'm not really measuring. As I said, it's going to be about a total of about 4 cups. But I can start with using the whisk to get the clumps out, just get it going. But after a while, it'll get so clumpy, the whisk isn't going to work very well. I found people in my family don't like cleaning up after I make bread because there's big clumps of this dough that are tougher to clean. So yeah, at this point we might say, okay, let's get it out of the whisk. Probably add a little bit more out of the whisk, and then I'm going to switch to using my rice paddle just because I like using rice. Yeah, I might try and get that out of there a little bit. So, and you'll be amazed. We're just going to stir, and I'm going to keep adding flour. Keep this going, and you let it sit. I think, cooking with yeast, you just got to have patience. It goes on its own time. It's real sticky. You're going to want it to have just a little different feel. So I'm going to add a little bit more flour. I just sprinkled a little bit more on, maybe 3/4 of a cup, I don't know. And you'll see it feels dry around the edges, but just keep working it, keep working it. At some point you're going to dive your hands in. Make sure you wash your hands and you take off your rings. And let me start this. So it's going to get real sticky. But sometimes I just like kneading it in the bowl. And there's some recipes say you don't even have to really knead this stuff. But I find you'll get different textures for different amount of kneading, different textures for, if you don't add gluten, for example, I don't think you get as nice a texture. I like the gluten. Just keep kneading this. It feels good. And just be patient with the yeast. Remember, it's a little live thing. Okay. Now I'm going to pause this. So you can keep working it and pulling up the flour that's on the edges. I really like pulling out my circa 1960 plastic Tupperware. It's upside down. Doesn't matter, but I got to show you that whole circa 1960. It's a thick plastic mat that protects the counter and protects the food from the counter. If this is kind of got a lot of flour, so it's not sticking. If it ever sticks, you can add more flour there. We're just going to knead. I'm kind of clearing out the top of the bowl or the bottom of the bowl from some of this flour. And you just keep kneading it. It kind of sticks together. If it's too dry, you add more water, or oil. And if it's too wet, you add more flour. And eventually it feels like it starts off dry and then it'll get sticky. So that's when you just grab a little bit more flour and stick it on there. My precise measuring strategy. And you'll find it gets kind of elastic after a while. But kneading is one of those pleasurable things, I think, that helps arthritis, helps keep your hands strong. It's also meditative. It helps get the yeast in everything evenly distributed, and healthy yeast is kneaded yeast. So here, this is about, not even 5 minutes. I added a little bit more flour. And I'm thinking I'm going to just put it in my prepared pan. Remember that pan that had the parchment paper in it? But one of the things I really like doing is we can get a nice crust if you coat the outside with olive oil. I also could say that, I found that Grandpa Jim, puts an egg in, and an egg, it just makes it a little more moist, so you add a little bit more flour. And that also gives a really nice texture to the bread. And if we coat it with oil, we'll get a really nice crust. We can also brown the crust if you put like an egg yolk and water on top of it. I don't usually bother doing that, it kind of uses up the whole egg. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to pour a little bit of olive oil in my hand. You can see again I'm measuring precisely, so I can layer the whole outside with olive oil. And then I'm going to put it in my pan. And I find that if I've split it in half and then try and reassemble it, that bread will crack there and it will be unstable. But it's gonna rise, and I leave it for a couple hours. I find it's possible to leave it for too long, but we're gonna leave this for a couple hours, and I'll put it in my oven, which is cool, a cool oven as opposed to a hot or a warm oven. So let's look at the setup in the oven. So there's the bread pan with the bread in it, and directly below it you can see I've got a bowl. In that bowl is hot water, like steaming hot water. So I'm going to close the oven door, and I'll just let it sit in there. The hot water will provide a warm and moist environment for the yeast to grow and enjoy the food provided in the dough. So now 2 hours have passed. Shall we check on it? So let's see how much it's risen. So can you see that? See, it's risen. So I'm going to take out that bowl of water, and put the oven at 350. I'm just going to start it right now, 350 for 35 minutes, and then let's see what it looks like in 35 minutes. Are you ready to see it? Well, let me just say before we pull it out, I've been working on something else. While the oven's hot, I like to take advantage of some other things. Like what I've been doing here is the makings for a shepherd's pie. There's some potatoes boiling, and I'll make some mashed potatoes out of that. And over here is the innards, some leftover. It's actually leftover turkey and vegetables. That recipe's for another day. Let's look at the bread. Let's see what it looks like. It's been in for 33 minutes, and it started from a cold oven, you may remember. I'm opening it now, and let's see if you can see this. Now look at that. It smells marvelous. I don't know if you can see the color. So I'm going to take it out, see if I can take it out of the pan, and see how that looks. It's getting my computer a little wet here, a little wet, a little hot. So put this down on the counter. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So let's see if I can. There it is. And yeah, even though I have this granite countertop, I try to preserve the protectant I have on it and not put hot things on it. But let's turn this upside down, and you see how easy it comes out because of the parchment paper. And I can actually handle this. And it's a little light colored on the bottom, so what I'm going to do is put the pan aside, and I'm going to put it in the oven just like this in the hopes that I can get the bottom burnt as well. Notice I'm handling it. It's not too bad. So see if I can set this up, and I'm sure I'm just going to stick this in the oven. So about 4 more minutes have passed, and let's take this out, see what it looks like. And it's got a real nice, a little darker color in the bottom. I'm going to let this cool and then slice it up, and you can see what it's like. Notice it was only one rising did this, and notice how clean the pan was because of the parchment paper. So I'm going to put my shepherd's pie in the pan. Use it while it's hot, and I'm going to slice this. See how it is. And there you go. Let's taste some with some warm butter. I like the heel, so I'm going to take this. Gramps likes it with honey. But let's see. You know, there's nothing like bread right from the oven. I hope you enjoyed this. More to come. Cooking without measuring.